Andre Drummond for three. Yes. You never thought you'd hear that. Welcome to the Sixers Talk podcast brought to you by Wilmington University, WilMU Works, Danny Pommells, Noah Levick, Amy Fadool, our producer, Ben Berry, making things happen behind the scenes. And Andre Drummond stretching the defense. It was a corner three. Well, nothing
Yeah,
wrong with that, right?
against Chris Archidiacono and
And Jonah Bolden.
Jonah
Jonah
Bolden.
Bolden.
So
New Zealand Breakers were in the house on Monday. And Noah was there, courtside, taking it all in.
So he does. That's how he rolls.
Did you have to wear sunglasses, Noah, because of the pink jerseys?
I think the pink and black works for him. It's unique though. I doubt that's coming to the NBA anytime soon.
Hey, listen.
Yeah.
Those city jerseys that Miami might break out. You never know.
Yeah, they got the pink rocking.
Yep.
The Drummond threes, which we'll talk about a little because it certainly was a standout aspect of the game, reminded me of the last time the Sixers played an international opponent, and the big headline then was Ben Simmons took and made a three.
That's right.
So we'll see kind of what path Andre Drummond follows here. I think it's, of course, a different sort of deal where Ben Simmons, everyone was wondering, ooh, does this mean this young player is finally going to unlock this important tool to his game? Andre Drummond, 31 years old. He's already known for being an elite offensive rebounder and traditional sort of big man. But hey, maybe there's something else that is part of what he brings to the table. And shot looked good.
Yeah.
It was actually a smooth shot, especially for someone who's had problems knocking down free throws. He's clearly been working on it. You see him before and after, shoot arounds and practices and whatever, putting in the time. And at least, in a preseason game that meant absolutely nothing, the results were as good as you can hope for. He even tried another one later, which did not go down, but 1 for 2 from 3-point range is pretty decent marksmanship from your 6'11", 280-pound big man, Mr. Drummond.
You got the 6'11", 280-pound Andre Drummond shooting threes, and then you have the 6'8" Guerschon Yabusele taking over the center spot. Maybe Drummond could be the stretch guy, and Yabusele could guard the basket. But this guy Yabusele really provides something as the dancing bear. So as his nickname is, that the versatility that we had hoped that he would have, and he can also step outside and shoot a shot, but as we also have talked about in past podcasts, we have been wondering when the Sixers would embrace the small ball five, and Yabusele seems to be the type of player that has the girth to be able to battle with the bigger players, but also can keep them honest by pulling their center away from the basket because he has an outside shot threat.
I would agree. I think small ball five doesn't feel appropriate for him because
not small.
So big.
Yeah, as I said, he's a big body, and I think Nick Nurse made a good point. It's a wide body, so when he gets a switch, he's hard to get around. Like he's gonna seal that little guy in the paint and do some damage. With 6 for 6 in this game, good immediate chemistry with Kyle Lowry, exploiting those mismatches and doing good work out of the pick and roll. But definitely intriguing that right away, with no Joel Embiid as expected, Guerschon Yabusele was the full-time backup big man, and I think he looked comfortable in that role. He said it is a different approach for him, whereas playing at the 4 is really natural and what he's accustomed to doing at the 5. He's got to think a little more about his defensive responsibilities and being more of a backline defender. But I think I agree. The offensive side of it looks like he should be able to find pretty regular opportunities to score. Like, yes, he maybe looks like he's a lumbering big, but he's not at all. He gets up and down there, and I think in the open floor and just in situations where someone is not physically equipped to handle him, you see he's ruthless and he's going to try to do damage. So I think good early signs there, and yeah, the initial indication is he's essentially the Sixers' third string center, and that Nick Nurse, of course, is always going to be open to using that and other unconventional options, perhaps even in situations where Joel Embiid does
Mhm.
play and he just thinks the matchup or the switch heavy scheme of the opponent or something along those lines might make it a good idea to play Yabusele at backup center. Do think like we should still probably remember he's a four. I think that's primarily how Nick Nurse sees him. But that was one of the bigger eyebrow raisers for me in the preseason opener that he was their backup five and looked like a good fit, honestly, in that particular role.
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like, Yabusele kind of burst onto the scene here in America during the Olympics, and rightfully so. Not everybody's locked into Euro basketball. He did have that brief stint here with the Celtics years ago when he came over to the NBA, but the Sixers had him on their radar for a while. And when we talked to Daryl Morey on media day, he said, "Listen, they tried to bring him over before, but his contract just it was too rich on the end as far as buying it out for getting out from Madrid." So he had to work a little magic. Yabusele did to get out of that contract. And Maury admitted, he's like, I think he's actually losing money, but he was just so interested and really just bought into being a part of not just the NBA again, but with the Sixers again. So he might, he did take a bit of a loss when it comes out as far as what his contract is here and what he was making overseas. But I thought that was interesting. I didn't realize that they had been kind of looking at him, for at least over a year before anybody else really kind of knew what he could do. I think he did fine tune his game over in Europe more. We saw him on that stage in the Olympics. He played very well. But Noah's right. I mean, he is a big body, like small ball just in height only, but not in the way that he plays. So it'll be very interesting to see because that's a guy that could really carve out a nice little niche, I think.
Hey, buy low. Low
Yeah,
risk, high
right?
reward, man. Like you get this guy with something to prove and really addresses a need for the Sixers team, particularly with this approach that we're continuing to really soak in. The osmosis of everything is telling us that Joel Embiid is really going to embrace not playing if it makes the most sense to delivering him healthy for the postseason. And I'm saying not playing as in like cutting back on his minutes and not trying to, as Joel put it, uh, stretch his
Right.
availability to a
Right.
point where maybe he
You're
should
not
take some time
Yeah,
off.
you're not overusing him, and listen, they've all said it. They've said it in the offseason, they said it at media day, they're gonna continue to say it. It's all about getting Joel Embiid healthy to the postseason. He has said it, the coachings are like, "Listen, what you call it load management, whatever." It's, uh it's just one of those things. It's like, "All right, whatever you need to do, if it's just days off, if it's back to I don't care what we go back to, you need to have Joel Embiid as healthy as possible." And that's limiting his play at times.
Yeah.
But yeah, when you have Yabusele, you have Andre Drummond, you have a Dembona there to kind of spell some of those minutes and not make it such a complete fall off with Paul George taking some of the offensive scoring load and Tyrese Maxey as well. It probably bodes really well that some of this can come to fruition and Joel can possibly be in a situation where he's more healthy when the playoffs come around. Let's take a time out here on the Sixers Talk podcast and pay some bills because we are brought to you by Wilmington University. WilMU works. Get to know Wilmington University online or in person at wilmu.edu. Its open house is on Wednesday, October 16th. Check it out at wilmu.edu/open house. Celebrity cook Steve Martirano brings his Italian-American cooking back home to Philly. Enjoy Martirano's Prime at Rivers Casino with Steve's famous meatballs and Sunday gravy, prime steaks, and more. Make reservations for Martirano's Prime on Open Table. Back here on the Sixers Talk podcast, you will see them back on the court October 11th for more preseason play against the Timberwolves. And I think that this would be an appropriate time to give people something to look out for that the Sixers have been working on. Noah Levick has an article on our website about them using this preseason training camp time to attack some of the deficiencies and issues that they have, particularly the defensive rebounding and the pace. We saw how much Isaiah Hartenstein used his dogged determination on those second chance points on offensive glass to parlay his way into a big contract with Oklahoma City Thunder to help send the Sixers home in the first round. Nick Nurse is completely disgusted by that, I assume. And it's like, let's focus on figuring out a way to make sure that we are a better defensive rebounding team, and in turn, using that defensive rebounding to ignite a faster pace of play in transition. Noah, can you give us some of the cliff notes on what Nurse is thinking there and what they're doing in practice to reinforce that?
Yeah, he said essentially every single day they are working on rebounding. And part of what's interesting to me is he's directly tying that to trying to be a faster basketball team that plays more in transition. So I think absolutely, like, defensive rebounding was arguably their most glaring weakness last year. Pace was not. I mean, I think like pace as an individual stat isn't the most helpful because, of course, like whether a possession
You
ends
can
at
play fast, but it doesn't mean it's efficient basketball.
Right.
right, and I
Yeah.
think it's more about just playing in transition, like, whether a possession ends at 12 or 8 left on the shot clock doesn't really matter, but it's about getting open floor opportunities where your athletic players who are super fast and aggressive can do damage, and, yeah, like, statistically, the Sixers did really well in Nick Nurse's first year at, scoring a lot in transition. They were actually number 1 in the NBA in points added through transition play, but he's ambitious, he wants more, and he thinks this particular roster is capable of it. And I agree with that. I think we all see Tyrese Maxey at times can be a little careful. He has that coach's son instinct where he doesn't want to make bad, reckless plays in the open court. And I think we see that players like Oubre, like Caleb Martin, are certainly ones that enjoy playing out in the open court, and he's just, yeah, Nick Nurse is looking to first secure that possession and then really encourage the Sixers to look for those hit ahead passes and for the team slashers to do what they do best
Mhm.
and put pressure on the paint. That doesn't always look like easy layup or dunk, but just doing something productive before the defense is actually fully set. And yeah, like, it sounds really, really basic and fundamental, but you need the ball before you're able to play fast. And I think the Sixers learned that a bit the hard way last year. And so, in addition to trying to get possessions via forcing those turnovers and doing the classic Nick Nurse aggressive defensive stuff, they know that the defensive rebounding needs to take a serious leap up. And they believe if it does, that'll certainly aid the aim of being a team that's really great in transition this year.
Yeah, it's like the number of possessions, right? The more times you have the ball, the more chances you have to score. I mean, it's simple math. But I thought it was interesting, Noah, your point about the fact that Tyrese Maxey can tentative is not the right word, but you're right. Like maybe more careful, just because he is so aware of his role and what that is, and sometimes that not that you want him to play reckless in any way, shape, or form, but sometimes I feel like you're less inclined to be a little too like a little bit more aggressive than normal because of how much you want to be careful. And so to me, that's interesting how they're going to kind of walk that line, because sometimes when you are extra aggressive, you can you can turn the ball over, but I think that they'll take the good with the bad. If everybody's just gang rebound, like if you watch that Knicks series, the Knicks are gang rebounding. Everybody on that team is tasked with rebounding, and it's not a role player situation. It's not like this guy's a rebound. Josh Hart rebounds, Jalen Brunson rebounds, they all rebound. Certainly, Mikal Bridges is going to fill that role for them going forward. So I think that that's the mentality for this team. It's not just like, oh, that's that guy, because a lot of times you would watch and there would be Sixers standing around like,
Mm.
oh, I thought that was your ball. And no, 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 it's everyone's at this point. Like it's everybody in there. And that can lead to unnecessary kind of, taps that go the wrong way or whatever else, but you'll take the good with the bad because the aggressive play will be rewarded in the end. You'll have more opportunities because of that. But there was too many times that you watch those games against the Knicks and there were whole guys just standing there watching the ball come off the rim, and you're thinking, the Knicks weren't doing that. The Knicks were absolutely crashing towards wherever that ball was going. So I thought that that was an interesting thing because Nick Nurse doesn't generally have that kind of philosophy, but watching one series, the man, that's his philosophy now, or at least it's one of them. It's got to be.
And on top of what Noah was saying, to actually have the athletes to
Yes,
do it.
the rangy wings are not something we've
Right.
seen. Athletic wings, we have not seen here that much, over the course of, 2 decades, so now you've got a couple of those guys.
Right, and we got Andre Drummond, who's known for killing it in that department. Paul George, his stats have always been really good as far as defensive rebounding rate. But Nick Nurse, after the first preseason game, even singled out Kelly Oubre and Caleb Martin as guys that need to crash in there and get physical and sometimes fly aggressively for boards because that's essential. I think Nick Nurse, just like such a competitive guy, his instinct is he wants to dominate all aspects of the possession game, but if you're being realistic, there are some you need to prioritize more with your team, and I think he doesn't really have to do much guesswork there. The Sixers need to not be very bad at defensive rebounding, and that'll help various aspects of their play if they're able to accomplish that goal.
The Sixers playing the New Zealand Breakers in their preseason opener seemed to be the perfect opponent for Jared McCain to wet his feet with the professional basketball level because he looked really comfortable out there. 15 points for him, a guy who has come in with a lot of expectations. Noah, what did you feel about his performance against the New Zealand Breakers?
I mean, Nick Nurse said this after the game. He went in there and he was shaky. He made a few errors right off the bat, and you could see the jitters. And you could see
Yeah,
how much this meant to him. Like he's been
especially
dreaming
after
about.
the summer he had, right?
Yeah, yeah, right. Like he really wanted to prove that he's the real deal and just embrace being on the professional basketball stage. He compared it to the surreal feeling of being in 2K, like he was in a video game or something. Um, and look, I think it wasn't like the smoothest night for him overall. Nurse gave him a ton of minutes, gave him a team high 28. So I think that enabled him to find his groove a little bit. Continued to make some defensive mistakes, just like took some bad angles. I think just blew a couple coverages again. Chalk it up to the first game nerves. But I think the bottom line is got 9 threes up there, made 4 of them. The release was ultra quick. And it's very evident that he'll be able to find shots for himself in the NBA, even though he is, only a 6'2", rookie guard. I think he has that knack for finding his little windows, for pulling up in transition, for working off screens, and the shot is pure and really good, even though the results in summer league wouldn't have told you that. So I think just confidence wise, fantastic for him to get that game under his belt and to actually see shots go through that hoop was my biggest takeaway from McCain.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head because when I was watching it and I saw a little bit of what looked like nerves, kind of just some errant plays and maybe trying to do too much, I thought this guy just wants to prove like what you saw in summer league was not who I am. I think he is such a workhorse. He's a guy that wants to put his best foot forward at all times, and he did not have a good summer league. And that's where people saw, and that's what he saw. Like it wasn't just like everybody else watching from the outside. He was in the competitions. He knew that he wasn't playing up to his ability and how he wanted to play as far as his NBA debut type of thing, as far as summer league goes. So I thought he was pushing it a little bit, maybe a little tight, a little forced it. Once he got into a rhythm, and Noah, you hit the nail on the head right there about like his shot looks great. It really does. It's a very smooth stroke. He's very decisive with it. And that's, if you want to see things aside from the numbers, which are pretty good overall, you wanted to see things like that. You wanted to see him obviously, be able to get back on defense, his footwork and everything like that. But I thought the fact that he was decisive, like I'm looking to shoot, I've got the ball, I'm ready to shoot, I shoot. Like none of this kind of like, dancing around, trying to get open, whatever. I thought that he did a really nice job with that and creating that kind of, rhythm for himself once he got going.
Also got 7 rebounds, and that is
There
an
you go.
area he takes some pride in. He was a very good defensive rebounder for a guard at Duke, and I think he understands if he's looking for early rotation minutes on this team, that can only boost his case. So I think that was another little
Yeah.
positive from his first NBA action.
Daniel, are you trying to leave the podcast? I saw
I
you
know, right? I'm like,
messing around.
like all of a sudden, I'm like half of the screen is like
Just
gone.
like you like
But
left. I thought maybe you're leaving.
speaking of leaving, we are running out of time here on the Sixers Talk podcast, and we want to get to this annual GM survey that has been released by the NBA. And surprise, surprise, the Sixers well represented,
Yeah.
and how the GMs around the league see them as a contender, as a team making moves that will put them in position to try to win a championship. 60% of the vote coming in for the 76ers, making one of the biggest moves of the offseason, and that would be the signing of Paul George. My son's team, the Oklahoma City Thunder, also a team that's very much in the discussion for contending. And look at the moves they made with getting Caruso and Hartenstein, and still having
Yeah,
their
that's
young
a good team.
core,
That's
a
a good
healthy
team.
Chet Holmgren, a Holmgren that's a little bit more seasoned. So
That's a good team.
that will definitely be a game to circle when they come to South Philly, the Thunder versus the Sixers. But are you guys intrigued by the attention the Sixers are getting, but also intrigued by the fact that they are still not considered by the GMs around the league as a team that is better than the Knicks or Celtics? But did we already know that?
Yeah.
Did we already know that? Is
Yeah.
that
I
did
mean,
we? Are
I
we
don't
conceding that?
don't think that's a shocker. I think
yeah, I
everyone
think that
still
that's
at least the Celtics sees the Celtics as the team to be, and I think it was super neck and neck with the Sixers and the Knicks, and I think everyone is curious what the Knicks look like with Karl Anthony Towns and that dramatic of a trade right before the start of the season. So yeah, that wasn't a shocker to me. I think it was interesting to see the Paul George move seemingly, um, regarded very highly by the vast majority of GMs. I think there are obviously negative ways you could look at that. You could be skeptical of Paul George's age or his ability to stay healthy, but I think most GMs seem on board with Daryl Morey that was a move that takes the Sixers to the next level. Again, doing a little throwback sort of deal, I am reminded of those good old 2019 26ers who got
I knew it.
similarly strong reviews in this survey. So the games are not played on paper, and the Sixers will have to show that they've actually become a better team, and they'll need good luck on the health front, of course, with their stars that they're putting a lot of chips in. But yeah, I think clear that they've gotten the respect of GMs and teams around the NBA, and I think that by and large is deserved. I think it's hard to spin their offseason as anything besides very productive and impressive in my eyes.
Yeah, I mean, they had basically an entire roster to build, right? And I think that's one of the more impressive things when you look at it. No GM out there was tasked with, building 10 guys. You needed to sign 10 guys. Now, granted, Tyrese Maxey was a re-signing and obviously bringing him here. And then Kelly Oubre was a re-signing, but Kelly Oubre took less money to come here. And you had to bring in a guy like Caleb Martin. And PG was the obvious choice, but you still had to make the deal and get it done and make it, work here. So I thought it was a very good offseason. It was not surprising that it was highly regarded. I think GMs know the landscape. These are guys that are in it every single day. They know what some of these deals take to make. They know how hard it is to make some of these deals because of players thinking that they, are undervalued and they need more money or whatever. And so I thought it was
Caleb
interesting.
Martin. We
Yeah, I
got
mean,
Caleb Martin 'cause
think about
he
it.
was
I mean,
expecting more money.
well, even look at like 2 years ago when Kelly Oubre, like he got one offer and was to stay with the Hornets. And he's thinking like, I'm a 20-point scorer, but he was a 20-point scorer on a Hornets team. And so he bet on himself and obviously it paid off, but he still wanted to stay here in Philadelphia. And you brought up Caleb Martin. I mean, a prime example. He left Miami and there was money left on the table. So I think GMs look at the Sixers moves in totality. They look at it obviously with the highlights of like a Paul George, but in the totality of it all, building an entire roster practically, and then coming in the way that they did and the signings that they made. And I think that there's some lesser known signings or lesser talked about signings, not less lesser known, but that people maybe like GMs are excited about as far as providing depth and different things like that, like an Eric Gordon or a Reggie Jackson and things like gentlemen that you're going to see and that are going to contribute in different ways, maybe popping up over the season. But also, it's about who they didn't sign and they didn't spend their money on. I think that also is going to turn heads. They did not bring back Paul Reed. They did not bring back, obviously, Tobias Harris. So there's different things where, and they didn't overpay on a guy. Like, listen, Isaiah Hartenstein is a nice player, but that's an overpayment to me. That is a reaction to what you saw in one series. Personally, that's my belief. So I would ding the Thunder on that. I think that Caruso is a very good signing for them, and I think Hartenstein's a good signing for that team. but they overpaid him. And let's be honest, I mean, that guy's making a lot of money for basically rebounding. So I think sometimes you elevate teams because of what they didn't do, and they didn't spend too much money on guys that maybe, aren't as going to be as helpful or worth that amount. It'll be interesting to see though.
Sixers weren't able to bring back Nick Batum. Interesting to see how that
Yeah, that
plays
was it.
out.
I would have
Yeah,
dinged him on that. I would have dinged
yeah.
him on that.
Quickly before we get out of here, Kyle Lowry, in that vein of point guards who turned into coaches, I think Rondo was in the coaching ranks now. Jason Kidd, obviously, with the Mavericks. Brian Shaw comes to mind.
Ty
He
Lue.
was Ty Lue. Kyle Lowry was picked as a current player who people could see making the change to an
Could you
NBA
see it though?
coach.
Could you really see him coaching?
I could see his butt walking up and down that sideline that
Like, I don't know. I mean, maybe
protruding
it goes back to like
protruding out of those suit pants. But
talking to Jay Wright about when Kyle was at Villanova. Like, listen, guys change and they mature, and he's in his 18th
sure,
year in the league. But it's like, wow, like to think where he was to where he's been. Like, I don't know. But I think that he's a very good mentor. He served that role splendidly last year. I know Tyrese really leaned on him. A lot of those guys did, whether they were guards or not. But I don't know. Noah, could you see Kyle like
Yeah.
coaching
The more I thought about it, the more it makes sense. Like there are probably more likely
or
candidates.
coaching type of guys?
Yeah, and he's got a family. Maybe he'll want to be more
Yeah.
focused on that after his career. But yeah, Nick Nurse said he sees it today, and Kyle Lowry is just such an exceptional competitor. I could see once he finally has to stop playing basketball, which he's still doing at 38 years old, he's still got that itch, right? And
Yeah.
he still wants to day to day think about how do I win and how do I make my guys better and how do I find those little advantages on the margins. So I think that aspect of it does really add up for me. And a funny tidbit from Caleb Martin, who's called Kyle Lowry like his big brother. He said he thinks that guy goes home and studies the rule book every night. He teaches the rules to the refs, to the coaches, to the players. So I'm sure if Kyle Lowry were to become a head coach,
He
he
talks a
would
lot.
be active and hold those officials to a high standard on the sideline, and he would be awfully knowledgeable about ways to get calls and get every ounce of juice for your team to be able to come out on the winning end of it. So yeah, like my first thought was okay, sure, he's a smart, experienced player, but as a coach, and the more I think about it, the
All
more
right.
I'm on board with it actually seeming plausible. Like, yes, he's a six-time All-Star, great
Yeah.
player, and yeah, has that surly aspect of his personality that
Mhm.
maybe doesn't seem the most like bring a locker room together. But look, like the guy's, I think, gotten to a point where he's universally regarded as a great leader, and he's just so freaking competitive that I could see it being something he actually wants to pursue.
you
I
have
think
Jay Wright, Eric
yeah.
Spoelstra, and Nick Nurse as people to lean
Yeah, I
on
mean,
for
listen,
advice. It's
not
not
the
too
worst
bad.
coaching
Yeah.
tree. If I had to choose a current Sixer that I would think would become a head coach, I'd probably go Tyrese Maxey. That'd probably be my first choice. He just
And
seems like a head coaching
and his
type
blood,
guy.
right?
Well, yeah, his dad coaches, but I don't
Yeah, I know he's said he really wants to do broadcasting, like, he wants
oh, I could see that
I
too.
think he wants to be like the next, Shaquille O'Neal, Charles Barkley, and he has, like, a performing theater background, so I think he likes
Alright,
kinda being in the spotlight, and I think we see that with him as a player.
you
But,
do.
yeah, I could see him when he's Kyle Lowry's age being someone where we're saying many of the same things, and we're seeing him as, a guy who could one day be in that coach's chair for sure.
Interesting.
Be sure to check out Noah Levick's work on NBC Sports Philadelphia.com. As I mentioned, the Sixers back on the court Friday. It will be fun to see what roster or who they throw out there from the roster. But we will be here every step of the way. I owe you guys an apology. We were supposed to have Kate Scott on last week from the Bahamas, but there was a miscommunication and I
No,
did
no,
not.
it was not a miscommunication, it was no communication.
Ben put
Daniel, I
Ben put
will
failure in the
I
chat. Ben
I
put
will
failure.
I will call Kate and ask her.
Yeah,
Daniel,
I
did you call
was.
Kate? No.
No, I did not.
We'll
I
have
did
her
not
on at
call
some
Kate.
point, but she'll be in America when we have her on.
She will be, and I
That'll be
apologize
it'll
to
still be
everyone out
great
there.
though, it'll still be great.
Much love to everyone out there. Thank you for listening and watching
Thank you
and
guys.
bearing with us. For Amy, Noah, and Ben, I'm Danny. We'll see you next time.